Welcome, listeners of Illusion to Temporal Discussion, the episode-by-episode Nightmare retrospective podcast. I'm Martin Harder, and I'm an ancient mariner. And with me today, our special guest host is Peter Pulsford. Peter, as you may know, is one of the voice actors for the LEGO Nightmare series on YouTube, and he is also one of our patrons at the Keeper of the Book of Quests level. We'll put a link to the LEGO Nightmare series in the description. Peter is also a Keeper of the Book of Quests over on our Patreon. Today we're looking at Series 3, Episode 13. It was broadcast on Friday the 1st of December 1989. New Kids on the Block was still number one with You've Got It, The Right Stuff. And topping the UK box office, the Ivan Reitman directed sequel, Ghostbusters 2.
At the stroke of midnight, on New Year's Eve of the last decade of the 20th century, America's largest city is about to pay for the nastiness of its inhabitants. When that day comes, when the slime starts to rise,
the Titanic just arrived.
When ghosts start arriving by the boatload,
We gotta find the guys.
there's only one thing to do.
Sometimes weird things happen. Someone has to deal with it. And who are you gonna call? All right, suck in the guts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
The superstars of the supernatural are back to nuke the spooks.
Two in the box! Ready to go. We be fast and they be slow.
Make some time.
Don't put any of those old cheap moves on me.
No.
It's different.
I have all new cheap moves.
Raise your spirits.
If we don't do something by midnight, you will be remembered in history as the man who let New York get sucked down into the 10th level of hell.
And kick some slime.
Looks like a giant Jell-O mold.
I hate Jell-O.
Oh, come on. There's always room for Jell-O. Happy New Year. Hose 'em.
Ghostbusters 2.
You're short, your belly button sticks out too far, and you're a terrible burden on your poor mother.
Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, and Ernie Hudson in an Ivan Reitman film. Ghostbusters 2.
We're the best. We're the beautiful. We're the only Ghostbusters. We're back.
Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call?
I have opinions about Ghostbusters 2. I'm interested to see if they match up with yours.
I don't think I saw it at the time, probably too young. I just had a scare a few years ago with Little Shop of Horrors, which gave me nightmares, and I was sort of more carefully guarded about what films I could watch. But I think it's one of those films that for me, it's long enough ago that I just remember the awesome bits. And if there were plot problems or anything, then I wouldn't register them, although I have seen all four Ghostbusters films now. So it remains a good memory for me.
I have a love-hate relationship with Ghostbusters 2. It was the first Ghostbusters film that I saw, so it's always going to have that kind of feeling of nostalgia for me. But looking back at it, it's literally just the first film, but with no smoking. So literally exactly the same plot, beat for beat.
Yeah, that does sound about right, actually. I think at that age, we just remember the awesome bits. I remember the cartoon, and there was a comic as well.
Oh, the cartoon and the comic were fantastic.
Yeah, there were two comics, or two cartoons, I think. I'm not sure which one I was watching, but they were a lot of fun.
Yeah, because there was a bit of a mess with the rights, wasn't there? Because Filmation originally released a live-action series called The Ghostbusters, and then Dan Aykroyd had to get the rights off of them to call his film Ghostbusters. And then Filmation released a cartoon called Ghostbusters, which was a cartoon of the original live-action series to catch in on the movie. So the actual cartoon of the movie had to be called The Real Ghostbusters. And let's face it, The Real Ghostbusters was much better.
Maybe that's what I watched. Was that written by the guy from Babylon 5, Joe Straczynski?
I'm not sure about that. But The Real Ghostbusters was the one that was based on the film, so it had characters from the film and everything. Ghostbusters, the Filmation cartoon was completely different and had like one of them was a gorilla, I think, and there was a robotic ghost called Primeval, which, to be fair, is one of the best names ever.
Yeah, well, that would be crushingly disappointing for a child, having seen the film, wouldn't it, to watch that and then it's not even the same people from the film.
And then, of course, there was Extreme Ghostbusters after that, and then it got really complicated.
Oh, I hadn't heard of them. Someone must have done a timeline and try and sort of tie them all together in the multiverse.
It's actually worth checking out. It didn't last very long, but it had some pretty cool ideas. In the news today, members of the armed forces of the Philippines belonging to the Reform the Armed Forces movement began a coup d'etat against the government of the Philippine President Corazon Aquino.
When light crept in this morning, some of the rebel soldiers who tried to enter the government stronghold Camp Aguinaldo were seen being carried by medics because of injuries. The landing vehicle truck of the rebel soldiers was immediately destroyed by a single shot from a government 105 howitzer. When the rebels lost their main source of firepower, the rebel troops, mostly coming from the Philippine Marines, were paralyzed near Gate 1 of Aguinaldo, specifically at the St. Ignatius Chapel and at the dispensary.
The coup was defeated by the government a little over a week later, but led to 2 other coup attempts the following year, including the Hotel Delfino siege. This date in 1989 also saw the first annual Day Without Art, during which art institutions organised programs to raise awareness of HIV and AIDS. The date was specifically chosen to coincide with World AIDS Day, which began the year before. And now time turns, the recording light burns, time out is gone, the podcast is on.
Time turns, the fire burns, and now you phase with us once more. Welcome. The turn of the year draws nigh, and still no heroes appear. For the dungeon remains undefeated in this, its latest manifestation. Can no one conquer it? I wonder. And I wonder if these, our latest challengers, have the grit to go through to the end. Let's remind ourselves. The Leicester maidens' luck is in, and friendly faces smile on them. Well, not all friendly, I admit, but then they didn't have the wit to deal themselves a winning hand. Still, luck holds true, they're doing grand. And when a young friend gave a clue, it helped them into level 2. Here, a wizard sat in glee and put them through the 3rd degree. They passed, of course, and now they're pressed and poised before another test.
So we start off with the Dungeon Ditty as usual. It doesn't start off great with in and them, but after that we've got admit, wit, hand, grand, clue, to, glee, degree, and pressed and test. The rest of them are quite serviceable, but not particularly imaginative.
I don't remember them being bad, but then I've heard them on the podcast, and then, yeah, now you point out there's a lot of approximate rhymes. That seems pretty good. What's that, 5 out of 6? Not bad at all. We rejoin Julie and her team, Amanda, Marie, and Angela from Knighton, Leicester, in Merlin's throne room. Taking heed of the advice offered to them, they invoke the first step.
Can you try hopping on the spot, Julie?
Yeah, hop on the spot.
Oh, yes.
Right, now you can take a step forward.
The next step is a handshake, which Julie performs dutifully, followed by a stretch. With the path now fully formed, Merlin appears.
Take a pinch of salt and ambergris and wait till moonlight gives it zest. Then turn thrice round and oh, not now. Can't you see I've almost got it?
I was watching this with my son and we had a few observations. And anyone tried to invoke all 3 steps at the beginning? Would that be safer? Could you do it from a distance?
I don't know. I will have to look into that, because I have a vague memory of that actually happening at some point, but I might just be confusing it with Scott's team, who obviously invoked step 2 first.
Yes, I did just watch that, yeah.
Scott was lovely, by the way. He's like really kind of like into talking about the show.
Yeah, I heard the first, I caught up with those you put out. Yeah, seemed like a nice guy. Yeah, that was unfortunate. Whoever was watching that, I guess Tim Child must have thought, oh, he's made it. Oh, he hasn't made it. Shall I push him over? I better have, because they've seen it now.
Trigard, Can't we run on some sort of sensible schedule, like one adventure every 50 years?
Hardly practical, Merlin, when you consider how much you forget in 50 minutes. No, I'm afraid business is pressing.
Oh, very well.
Merlin reluctantly asks his customary 2 questions.
A domestic pet came from the region of Atavia in Arabia thousands of years ago. What is it?
The answer is cat, and they get this question right.
Yeah, I think I would have guessed that.
Yeah. If you didn't know the answer, it would be kind of easy to guess, which is fair enough. The next question's a bit more difficult, though, isn't it?
It isn't a monkey, it isn't a dog, it isn't a bird, and it can't be a hog. If it isn't a cat, and it isn't an ox, then what sort of animal is a flying fox?
Now, I have to be honest, I thought it was a squirrel.
Yeah, I would have said squirrel. Even yesterday watching this, having obviously seen this 2 or 3 times before, I still thought squirrel. Or did I just remember from saying squirrel? And I'm a science teacher. So, yeah, no excuse. That was a hard question. I think my second guess probably would have been bat, to be fair. But yeah that's harsh.
Hello, listeners of Illusion. Since we recorded this podcast, Peter has got back in touch with us and told us he asked 2 of his science teacher colleagues what kind of animal a flying fox is. The biology teacher didn't know, but said he would have hedged his bet with mammal. The chemistry teacher did know, but he taught Middle Asia and had seen them in the wild, although he says they're usually called fruit bats. See, I've actually written here that on the script that the answer was fox, but that's obviously wrong. It is a bat. It's quite an interesting bat, actually. It does actually resemble a fox.
I did look it up, and it's a huge bat, isn't it?
Absolutely massive. It's also known as a pteropus. It's a fruit bat, basically. They live in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and East Africa, and some oceanic islands in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. According to Wikipedia, there are at least 60 extant species in the genus. Merlin meant that their failure to answer both riddles correctly will mean that the team must face the challenge ahead without his help, but reassures them that others have done so and survived. I cannot think of a single instance where others have actually survived without his help.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to that, but I noted that as well, yeah. You can still make it. Good luck. Does he think they can make it? Like, how could they have made it from that point? How? Can we come back next time we meet Merlin? Can we just ask, you said the last team could make it. Could you just tell us how? Just for our interest, thanks.
Well, if they get attacked by anything, just ask it if it wants a present.
Forward. Where am I?
You're in a room, and in the middle there's a bird. I think it's a raven.
I think we better get out quickly, because it looks like it could attack. Do you want to walk forward, Julie? Not to expose it.
Who's a cheeky boy, then?
Pardon?
Who's a cheeky boy?
With no steps to give out today, the raven tells Julie to say, "Good night, Jack." When she does, the raven tells her that this is a password. Treguard says that he doesn't think they'll learn anything else from the bird, and the team guide Julie out.
Where am I now? You're in a cave, and there seems to be what looks like a giant toad or a frog at the end of the cave.
The team have some trouble making out where the exit is, which seems to be a bit of a pattern in this chamber. They eventually manage to figure out where it is, and as they guide Julie towards it, a skull haunting appears and begins to chase her. So I think they actually added the toad into this chamber because people were having so much trouble trying to work out where the actual exit was.
Okay, so you didn't have to go straight forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the toad doesn't do a lot here, but it's still cool.
He looks cool, yeah.
The skull sort of moves suddenly fairly quickly towards them, and they kept their cool. And then sort of gets near them and then kind of stops again. And they were still at one point moving towards it as it was moving towards them. And then they sidestepped to the left. A younger team might have panicked here, I thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we have seen it in the past. And we're going to see it later on in this episode as well. There's quite a hilarious moment with a bit of team panic when Tim Child's mouse cursor makes another appearance.
It was a good episode to get this one. Quite a lot happened.
Yeah, it's quite a fun one.
Where am I? You're in a room and there's 2 guards and they look like they've just tied up a lady and stolen some of her clothes or something.
With their short sight, the goblins must have mistaken Julie for an armored warrior. Hurry, for they're bound to realize their mistake.
Help me!
In the second section of the cave, two goblins have bound Velda's wrists and ankles, and they've left her on the altar. When Julie appears, the goblins flee. The team guide Julie to the altar and instruct her to untie Velda.
Quickly, because they'll be back soon.
Oh, they're revolting creatures.
Hurry.
Oh, that's better.
Now who do I have to thank for my rescue?
Julie.
Julie. Then thank you, Julie. You will find that we of the Elven kin will neither be ungracious nor ungrateful. Now, I would give you aid of a more practical nature, but sadly, my road lies in that direction, while there is the path you must follow. Wait, though. There is something that might redress the balance.
Velda hands Julie a huge emerald and tells her that it is highly valuable elven stone. She then bids Julie good luck and leaves. The team guide Julie onwards. The goblins return to stalk Julie through the third section of the caverns, but she quickly leaves. I've got some troop movement notes here.
Okay.
That's all right. So yeah, my son was watching this as well. He noticed troop movements. Wanted to get into a little bit of detail. I guess that's sort of what the podcast is for. So the three sections, it's one of the few sets of rooms I think you commented before that we know are all together because you can sometimes see them from each other. So Julie comes in from the Toad Skull exit or entrance to the right as we see it from the middle one. The goblins run away through the middle. Then Velda goes off to the right, and we're told that the goblins they'll be back soon. But then we go to the third chamber and we see them from the side view. And then we see goblins coming from the way that Velda left. When Velda leaves, it looks to me like she sort of slips to the side, which I guess is just because the wall is there, but it's quite realistic, I thought, because it's like she's trying to slip past the skull and the toad. But then the goblins, before the horn is blown, return from where she went. So the two goblins that came in, I think are not the two original goblins, because they came back from a different direction. And if they came from that direction, they got past the toad, the skull, and Velda, or perhaps she slipped past them. And so they got there somehow without hearing the horn, and they sort of stand there, and then the horn goes, presumably blown by the two original goblins, and then they start moving. I guess they got there because there's some kind of call, and they start moving towards the adventurer, because, bad sight, but also the horn sort of told them which way to go, I guess. So I guess we know there's at least 4 goblins there, the original 2 that went away because their sight was so bad they thought he was an armored warrior. Came back at some point, or perhaps they were doing some kind of flanking movement for the next chamber.
So it was actually a very well planned military movement then.
Yes, the first 2 didn't seem particularly well armed, so perhaps they could overpower an elf maid. Maybe they lost their weapons along the way, but they knew what they were doing. They said perhaps the whole thing was their plan from the beginning.
And it leaves Julie open for the ambush that's about to happen.
Walk forward.
Danger, the goblins return.
Quickly walk forward. Quickly walk forward. Keep walking. Faster.
Where am I? You're in a long corridor with doors on each side.
There's somebody in the middle of the path further down.
Oh yes, it's the great corridor of the catacombs. Oh, what's an adventurer to do? And we're all pretty sure it's the same as before, except this one's on level 2.
Again, keep going. Walk forward. Stop. No. There's a goblin surrounding you, Julie. Say hello to the goblins and ask them if they'd like a present.
Oh, that is nasty. I shouldn't look anymore if Shame you didn't have that rather useful little anti-goblin spell that Merlin hands out on these occasions.
And then thus the quest comes to a rather abrupt end. I think this was a bit anticlimactic for the team. They deserved a bit better than this, I think. After such an awesome death from Scott's team, it's quite sad to see that this is just a captured by goblins thing.
Isn't captured by goblins quite cool? I mean, we never saw what they did. The goblin sort of moves in quickly, and then Traeger says, oh, it's better you didn't see what happened there. Or the goblin sort of approach gradually, but it's quite cool, I thought. And she tried to get through an exit, and the goblin comes right at her. Wasn't expecting that. It's sort of sad for them that that's how it ended, and they really had no chance after Merlin, after the difficult puzzle. I thought that's quite a cool way to end. I mean, the goblins don't get many kills overall, I don't think.
That's true. I mean, they get a few more in later series, but that's when Skarkill's involved as well. They don't really get many kills on their own. In fact, I think this is the first one.
Well, maybe they realised they had to get a bit more organised with their manoeuvring. 4 of them moving together, laying some kind of trap. That's quite impressive.
I love the reaction, though, to their death is laughing and asking them if they'd like a present.
Yeah. I mean, worth a try. I mean, I guess you sort of look around for things you could have done, apart from thinking, oh, we could have had the, we could have got the puzzle right. But apart from that, I guess you're just sort of thinking, what could we have done? The clue must be there somewhere. It must be something we've been given that works.
So I imagine they would have offered them the Elven Stone. I just think it's hilarious that the Dungeoneer's last words as the life force clock was coming onto the screen was, would you like a present? Imagine that on your tombstone.
And she does kind of say, this is valued by all the denizens of the dungeon or something. So it sort of seems like you might have to give it to goblins.
Yeah.
I see why they think that.
Still, you've done awfully well, and now I've got a spell for you. But you're not going to like it. Spellcasting. DISMISS. Goodbye, Julie, Amanda, Marie, and Angela. You kept us all guessing, but in the end, it was the lack of just one answer that let you down. Farewell.
Take me down to the path by the cliffs, give a dike and my scroll and my chin gap dismissed. Oh, watching please take me home.
If the dungeon's to be defeated, we desperately need a more powerful challenge. Perhaps this may be it. Enter, stranger. Who challenges next?
Martin too.
Your challenge accepted, Martin. Now let's see the mettle of your advisors. Call them to us.
Darren, Lee, Jamie.
The next team to challenge the dungeon consists of Dungeoneer Martin Toole and advisors Darren Cataniel, Lee McMurray and Jamie Cullen. They all hail from York. Traeger gives Martin a knapsack and helmet and then sends him on his way. Not even a last chance to chicken out this time.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's it. Just chuck him in. I mean, Traeger's 0 for 9, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Try and get him to go straight in there.
The rules rundown from previous series is now completely non-existent, which is good. He literally just turns them around and boots them through the door.
Now, I had to ask you this. Is this the first Martin? Are there other Martins?
There's been one other Martin, and it got very confusing when we were recording that podcast.
So how have the Martins done so far? 0 for 1?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a good feeling about this, Martin. I think you'll make it all the way.
Yeah, spoilers. He doesn't.
Are you ready? Yes. Well, if you're not, it's too late now, for the dungeon's ready for you. Now, away you go.
Where am I?
You're in a long green room.
Welcome to the dungeon. This is season 3. Everything is still the same. Our talking is mundane. We try to make it seem random. Our dice is on the exact same number. We'd better play the game. We'd better play and never talk about it. So welcome to the dungeon.
I hate this chamber.
I gathered that, yeah.
I don't hate it to the same extent that Mr. O'Doney does, but I definitely dislike it.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty impressive. If you're going to have it every episode, as well. It gets a little bit old.
Mm.
I think I don't remember it from watching it as a kid, so I think I must have started watching from the next series.
Either that or it just got so boring you blocked it out.
Maybe that was it. The time works differently in the dungeon.
There's a chalice above the centre door, and that's the door the team chose.
Martin has emerged, apparently through a solid wall, in the water room. Rather than appearing on the ledge this time, he is waist deep in the pool. Treguard warns the team this is probably not a safe place to bathe. Treguard warns the team that this is probably not a safe place to bathe. And as he speaks, some rather familiar sounding music begins to play, and a dorsal fin emerges from the water.
I don't think this is a very safe place to bathe, team. Get him out quickly.
Right, Martin.
Yes?
Quickly run.
Right.
The direction you're going
Right.
to is
Turn right. Turn right. Go.
I mean, this is practically copyright infringement, isn't it?
I thought it started off pretty similar to the film. I thought, how can they use that?
To the extent I'm not sure how much of the clip I can actually play on the podcast. Okay, so I've had another listen and I don't think it's actually that similar, so we should be okay.
I thought it sounded more Jawsy from the beginning, to be honest, and it sort of deviated. Also, how does he not know he's standing in water? Has that ever happened before? There's an effect that the Dungeoneer would definitely feel. He has to be told. I mean, it's a lovely effect, but yeah, surely he would know.
I'm guessing they must have put one of the blue blocks in front of him, but they've gone to the extent of adding the sloshing sound effects as he walks, which helps to sell the effect, really, and it's a good effect.
It sort of reflects off the walls a bit as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's lovely, but yeah, he would know. He would know. If he'd said, "No, it's all right. I'm perfectly dry. There can't be a shark can't get me here. I'm perfectly dry. Don't worry about it."
The team panic, leading to some of the most hilariously confusing directions in the show's history.
Go.
Oh, go forward. Turn back round.
Turn left.
That's
Walk
it.
forward.
No. Back.
Right.
Turn right.
Walk forward.
No. Left.
That's it. Walk
Right,
forward.
get out.
Where's
Right,
that
walk
turn?
forward.
And this is brilliant, isn't it?
With the shark nipping at their heels, they have to sort of climb up onto the side, don't they? Understandably panicking with a shark right there.
Once Martin is out of danger, the team guide him to the door.
Forward.
Where am I?
We think you're in a kitchen. In the centre of the kitchen, there's a table with a small stool. To your right, there's stoves and pans. There's 3 exits, 2 in the far wall and 1 to your left.
Martin picks up a pie from the table, but before he can knapsack it...
Here! What's your game then? You can't go pinching things just because they take your fancy, and you especially can't go pinching that.
Motley explains that the pie Martin was about to eat actually belongs to Mr. Grimwald, the ogre, so he was actually doing him a favour by stopping him from eating it. Motley laments that he has no food to give the Dungeoneer, but does have some kitchen magic to offer in exchange for a favour. He explains that being bound to the dungeon means that he's running out of fresh jokes, and that Martin's status as an outsider means that he is in the perfect position to help. If Martin can provide Motley with fresh material, the jester will compensate him.
Right, I've got a good joke here, right? So I'll tell him it. Okay. Why did the punk cross the road?
I don't know. Why did the punk cross the road?
Because he was stapled to the chicken.
Not bad. Not good, you understand, but not bad.
I actually thought it was quite a good joke. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know I'm going to get abused for that. Given that there was no notice, just to come up with the joke, and the Dungeoneer stepped in and said, "I've got a joke," and then does it, and I thought it was all right.
Yeah.
Good. Stapled to the chicken. It's a bit meta for that age.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Motley really knows what a punk is.
I think he just didn't hear it. Something was stapled to the chicken. That's why it was crossing. I had to play it a few times to hear that word. The punk, I suppose, is covered in bits of pointy metal, so he would have been stuck to a chicken. I guess. And yeah, he probably knows what a punk is by now. People have mentioned it.
I do like Martin's confidence with the joke. Right, I've got a good joke here, so I'm telling it.
Yeah, he's quite chatty, isn't he?
Despite Martin's outright lie, in my opinion, that it was a good joke, Motley gifts the team the spell Ghost. He wishes Martin happy hauntings, and the team guide him through the right-hand door.
Where am I?
You're in a square room with a tiled floor. There's an exit to your right in the wall, the only exit.
Right.
In the centre of the room, there's a table with some objects on it.
The team have arrived in Golgoroth's clue room. On the table are half a grapefruit, which Martin mistakes for an orange, along with a key, a bar of gold, and a corked bottle. The grapefruit gets knapsacked and Golgoroth appears.
Okay, what else is there?
Fearful flesh must turn and quail before Golgoroth flinch and pale.
There's a guardian here, turn and face it.
And the riddles are...
Who were the soldiers who sailed in dragon ships?
That's very good.
I'm a voice actor, you know. I was in the Lego thing. I was actually missing a tooth when I did my audition. I did the pickle for the first few episodes, and I had a bit of a lisp. I was trying to recreate it when I did it for the one you were in as well. I didn't quite get it, I think.
And the answer given is Vikings, which is accepted as the truth. Dragon ships are actually thought to have originated in China more than 2,500 years ago. However, there is evidence that the Vikings also adorned their ships with dragon heads. The largest known one is the ship of King Canute, the king who commanded the waters not to touch his feet.
Yeah, I was wondering about this. I don't think I would have got this. Although I don't know what else I would have guessed, but the rest of the team was straight in there, quite impressively. Yeah, maybe because I live in China. Maybe I would have thought they're like dragon boats, whereas the Vikings are longboats.
Yes.
I would call long ships, maybe. I was thinking, actually, as I was going through this, there's quite a few echoes in the File of Freedom. Perhaps I just watched this episode when I was writing bits of it. Like a few of the puzzles may have been a little bit inspired / copied. And the pie incident, for example.
Do you want to tell us a bit about the File of Freedom?
Well, thank you, if I must. So during the lockdown, Nightmare live show was cancelled. So Traeger went onto Facebook and Twitch and was reading the little game books that came with the show, the little choose your own path adventures. And he sort of ran out because we were doing them. So it put the poll up and then saying, do you want to go left or right and which things shall we take? And I fancied my hand at it. So I wrote a new one, which went down fairly well. I'd never really written anything before. But just, you know, as a fan of the show, taking just the fun elements that I liked. And so he read it out, and it was terrifying at first, just to have something like I'd read. I say a book, it's a PDF, but just to have everyone was very nice about it. But, you know, if there were mistakes in there, I feel awful. And there were a couple, actually. And then weirdly, I changed it a bit from week to week because there was, I put in a little joke about, do you want to explore the alcove? And there's nothing in the alcove. And then Traegard suggested maybe add something in there. So I changed the PDF from 1 week to the next, to surprise everyone. And then this whole sort of alcove subquest came about, in which it went into there were more alcoves, and there was the alcove brotherhood, and you could become the knight of the alcoves. It became a whole niche joke. And it became a way to make save points as well, because if it took us a week to go a level, you know, and you kept dying, we wanted it to last, but it was dragging on a little bit. So the alcoves became save points, and it worked fairly well. And they finished about when we needed them to, like when the last lockdown was finishing, the proper show came back.
Okay.
But there were little bits in it, like a pie you mustn't eat, for example, things that I definitely, well, obviously it's all copied from the show, but things that perhaps inspired by season 3 in particular. I have written a short Christmas version as well, perhaps to play next Christmas for the people on the Discord.
And the next riddle is...
Who is the sailor who is doomed to sail forever, but never land?
I have issues with this question. They answer the Ancient Mariner, which is an interesting answer. The Ancient Mariner is from the poem The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which tells the story of a sailor which shoots an albatross, causing disaster for both his ship and his crew. This is called out as falsehood, and the answer given by the War Monster is the Flying Dutchman. My issue is that the Flying Dutchman is not a sailor. The Flying Dutchman is a legendary ghost ship that's said to be doomed to sail the seas forever. I think this is unfair. I don't think that they were right. I just think that the question was wrong.
At that age, I wouldn't have known of any of those things. So I hope the rest of my team would have known this. I briefly thought, watching the other day, having seen it 2 or 3 times already, is it the Flying Dutchman? No, that's a train. And then they just got in there before me. I guess it's the Flying Scotsman.
Yeah, I think so.
He is called a Dutch man, so it's kind of, with a bit of poetic license, he's kind of is a sailor, you know.
I guess so.
It could say any sailor on the Flying Dutchman.
But then you're kind of reaching.
Yeah, it's not hard to reject Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner and accept the Dutchman, yeah.
I think sometimes whether or not you get the riddles right is dependent on what you learned in school that week.
A lot of Greek mythology and Bible stuff, and they went with boats all the time here. Yeah, I guess it's. I think, are you smarter than a fifth grader? It's often, have you learnt the thing recently? Name the ship of heroes, the ship in which Jason sailed to find the golden fleece.
It's the Argo. We all learned that in primary school.
Yeah, I'm impressed they got Argo as well. They didn't say Argus or like the Argonaut. They actually named the boat properly. I had to look it up. The boat maker is Argus, and it's called the Argo.
Yes, and the sailors are called the Argonauts.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have been sure. Even now, I think I would have mumbled it, or I would have been close enough. Okay.
The team has scored 2. The Wall Monster tells them that their quest is for the chalice, and that they may not prosper with gold. He also tells them that the first step is the tree. With that, Golgorach disappears. Martin takes the key and the bottle, leaving the gold as instructed. His teammates then guide him out.
Okay, you're walking along a corridor, it seems, or the corridor's moving past you. There's lots of doorways, and there's bats flying along just under the roof.
Warning, keep your head down, Martin. These tunnels are dwarf-made, and the ceilings aren't always as high as they could be. Martin, whatever you do, don't stop to rest until you're safely out of the tunnel.
Okay, keep going. The tunnel's coming to an end.
Where am I?
You're in a cavern. In front of you, fire shooting up from the ground. And around the bend, in the middle of the path, there's a flashing skull.
It seems that one of your predecessors has arrived before you and decided to stay. I should avoid him or her at all costs if I were you.
It's the welcome return at the Salamander Room. Martin has emerged from the door on the left, meaning that he has to contend with both fire bursts. Not only that, but there's a skull haunting lurking menacingly at the bottom of the screen, lurking around the apparent remains of a former dungeoneer. Did you notice it's even got a little helmet of justice there as well?
I didn't, to be honest. That's a lovely touch.
The team consider using the ghost spell, but Traegar advises them not to waste it. The skull begins to float up and down, so the team decide to risk it. They begin to carefully guide Martin across the first set of flames.
Okay, careful now, you're near the fire. Another step. Okay, just a little tiny one now.
No, a bit bigger.
Yeah, okay.
Come.
Now, when we tell you to go, you've got to walk fast. Okay?
Look out, team. Time slip setting in and Martin's trapped by it. Ah, yes. And so are you. There you see, it's time for us to leave you. For all adventuring is trapped fast in limbo until you phase with us once more. But it won't be for long. For though the journey may pause, it never really ends.
So what do you think of this episode then?
I thought it's a good place to end. That's a very cool chamber to end on, with the fire and I don't know, there's a salamander. And that's a nice touch if it's an old dungeoneer. I mean, aficionados of the show may be able to work out like which dungeoneer it is. Although Traegar said something about one of your predecessors has set up here, so maybe he died in a close by chamber and then came in.
Yeah, just kind of brought all his bones and the helmet of justice with him. No one's actually died in this chamber yet, so I don't think it's anyone that we've seen.
Well, there are meant to be many other quests off camera, weren't there? So I was thinking, yeah, if he couldn't sense that he was, knee deep in water earlier, then sometimes I thought with this room or with fire traps generally, they could say, walk forward until you feel the intense heat. And then stop there. When it dies down for a second, then go forward. And that would be helpful. But it's sort of a magic fire that you can't feel, and yet is presumably still dangerous. So I guess they were sort of just there. It might have dried him off from all the water he was standing in earlier.
I think it's like the Matrix, your brain makes it real. Even though it's a simulation, it will still harm you.
Yes, I guess that's it. So if they could just convince him there's no fire there, if they, as the dungeoneers, as the guides, they could just tell him it's fine, and just tell him there's nothing there. and he would be immortal. Perhaps we've just cracked the dungeon. That's how you get past all the timing puzzles. I was just working on a Matrix parody recently. Just the school I work at, we just thought it'd be fun to promote the science department. We made a Matrix parody, and there's a colleague of mine who turns out to be an awesome video maker, just incredible skills. And so I sort of produced it and got the actors to do it. He turned up with lights, and he's very good at visual effects. And so he's got some of my colleagues, jumping around and cracking the floor and like levitating. It's amazing. Going to show it in assembly in a couple of weeks.
Okay, and that's the end of this episode of Nightmare, and so I guess that's the end of this episode of Temporal Discussion. You can follow us on Twitter. We're at Nightmare Pod. If you want to support the podcast, we're Nightmare Pod on Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, here's a shout out to Keepers of the Book of Quests, Peter Pulsford, yes, and David N. Rabbit. Advisors Benjamin Bloom, Peter Sidon, David Thompson, and our newest supporter, Stephen Whalen, and Dungeoneer Peter Corridge. We've got way too many Peters on the Patreon. It's really confusing. Change your name.
It happens a lot. As Keeper of the Book of Quests, that keeps me busy as well. I'm in a different time zone from the other keepers, so I can watch it sometimes, and I sort of pass it over to him.
You can support us on Patreon at Dungeoneer level or above to get your name mentioned on the podcast. Higher level perks also receive merchandise, have access to exclusive episodes, and if you pledge as a keeper of Book of Quests, we will even offer you the chance to be guests on the podcast. Peter, your new poster should be on its way to you now. So obviously, because have you received it? Oh yeah.
A little bit creased at the moment. Yes, just arrived the day. Yes.
Oh, awesome.
So I must put it under something to flatten it out. That's very nice. Thank you.
Our website is nightmarepod.co.uk. And if you're looking for Temporal Discussion merchandise, including t-shirts, stickers, and other products, it's at nightmarepod.redbubble.com. You can email us at podcast@nightmarepod.co.uk.
And just keep telling yourself, it's only a podcast.
Isn't it? Peter's unofficial game book, Nightmare Live: The File of Freedom, is now available for download in PDF format on our website at www.nightmarepod.co.uk.